Hello everyone, welcome to Turkish series stars. Settle in, because we're about to unpack every moment that has the internet in a frenzy. Before we dive deep, a little reminder to follow and share so you don't miss any of the twists that keep arriving hour by hour. Now let's get to the story that has thrown a bright spotlight on the most talked about duo of the season, Alina and Alp Navras. Last night, during a primetime program that Alp Navras fronted with unusual vulnerability, he set aside his famously composed television presence and let the curtain fall on parts of his private life he almost never discusses. He spoke of crossroads, of timing, of connections that refuse to fade simply because life insists they should. It wasn't a tabloid-style outburst. It was quieter, more deliberate, the kind of confession that sounds like it took years to mature. And that's precisely why everyone watching instantly linked his words to one person, Alina. For months, whispers had followed them from set to set, event to event. They were seen leaving the same dinners with different friends, crossing paths backstage at award nights, sharing a brand shoot that seemed to crackle with an ease that felt more than professional. Neither confirmed anything, neither denied very much either. Their chemistry was the kind that doesn't need a label to be obvious. Together or not together, people insisted they fit. That's why when Alp looked into the camera and said, in his unhurried way, that some people enter your life and even when the paths split they never really exit your story, the studio fell still. It was the sort of silence that isn't awkward but attentive, as if everyone in the room recognized the moment could come back to haunt him. He never spoke her name. He didn't have to. Within minutes of the broadcast, clips of that single statement were everywhere. The words were replayed in slow motion with captions, debated on live streams, dissected in threads that ballooned into thousands of comments. One wave of fans applauded him for speaking from the heart, for honoring what had been, or perhaps what could have been, between two people who know how to hold their cards close. Another wave was harsher, accusing him of stirring a pot he promised to keep covered, of turning a private chapter into public material because it made for strong television. While the episode itself moved on to other topics, career turns, tough choices, the cost of being watched, those few lines would not let go. People dredged up sightings of Alina and Alp from the early days, when the buzz first ignited. Remember the quiet coffee shop 2 streets from the studio where they supposedly stopped by at closing time? The coastal run where a bystander swore they laughed like old friends? The charity gala where a camera caught an unguarded smile when their names were called back to back? There had been talk of a series that would bring them together at last, a production simmering in development, with camera tests that insiders described as electric. The words Alp chose made all those memories feel like foreshadowing, not random coincidence. But that wasn't the only reaction growing louder. According to those close to Alina, the broadcast did not land softly. She is known for guarding her boundaries, for the way she draws a line between her work and anything that smells like spectacle. If the whispers are right, she told her circle that private moments deserve to remain off the studio floor, that there is a right setting for intimate truths and a wrong one, and that even honest feelings can sound careless when shared in front of millions. The idea wasn't to dismiss what Alp felt, it was a warning about where and how such feelings are voiced. Alina herself stayed, at least publicly, almost entirely quiet. No formal statement. No lengthy explanation. Just a stark story on her social media that read, in white letters on a dark screen, that sometimes the quietest response says the most. That singular message became headline after headline, a shield and a mirror all at once, inviting interpretation without confirming anything. To some it was a refusal to be drawn into a public duel. To others it was a gentle rebuke, a line in the sand drawn without raising her voice. The timing made it all the heavier. Industry chatter had grown confident that Alina and Alp were circling a new project, something ambitious, something glossy, the kind of collaboration that moves seasons. Schedules had been tentatively aligned, producers were said to be thrilled at the prospect, and the idea of seeing them meet on set had fans counting down days that weren't even on a calendar yet. Now, after a few measured sentences on live television, that bright possibility stands on uneven ground. People inside the room say the meetings are not cancelled, but the atmosphere is tense, the calls careful, the language technical and cool where it had once been excited. On social media, the conversation took on a life of its own. Some claimed Alp had finally admitted what everyone already assumed, that he carries a place for Alina that time hasn't erased. Others argued he overstepped, that the stage was the wrong place, that romance should not be turned into an anecdote to boost ratings. And there were those who refused to pick a side, insisting both could be true, that his honesty was real, and that her boundary was necessary. What sharpened the blade was not just the confession but the context. Alp's image has long been one of poise and restraint. He does the work and rarely invites the world to inspect the spaces between. So when he let his guard down and traced the outline of a bond without naming it, it landed like an unsent letter finally read aloud. He spoke about the kind of timing that misaligns and then haunts you, about people who step into your days and leave something too significant to pack away. It was raw without being messy, and that is exactly why it echoed so loudly. Alina's response, minimal, controlled, quietly devastating, felt entirely like her. She has always let the work talk while she keeps the rest folded into something private. Off camera, sources say, she was not merely annoyed but shaken. Not at the idea that someone once mattered, but at having the weight of that idea tossed into a space where reactions are monetized and sincerity can be replayed until it becomes performance. She said before, in interviews that aged well last night, that tenderness does not need witnesses to be real. Her circle now suggests she believes the delicate boundary was crossed, not maliciously, but unmistakably. As the dust refused to settle, fans dug into the timeline. They tallied dates and sightings like clues. The brand shoot last year where a behind-the-scenes clip captured an unguarded look, the festival where they met by chance and shared an unplanned laugh on stage when a host teased them about rumors, the dinner where they arrived separately and left the same way but somehow looked softer afterward. The narrative people wrote around them was never tidy, but it was persistent. A tight friendship at minimum, something more at most. Whether last night was confirmation or complication depends entirely on where you stood before the cameras rolled. Then came the industry whispers. Some suggested that writers in charge of the upcoming project started to discuss contingencies. Could the story be adjusted to reduce romantic overlap? Would separate press days be necessary? Could a third name be introduced to ease the burden on both? Nothing official, everything speculative, yet the tension was undeniable. The idea of seeing Alina and Alp trade lines on set, which had only days ago felt like an inevitability, now felt like a question that needed an answer no one was ready to give. Meanwhile, on panel shows and in comment sections, the narrative splintered into opposing scripts. One side painted a picture of a man finally admitting he cared more than he let on, too late to make a difference but too honestly to ignore. The other side insisted that professionalism should be a wall no confession breaches, however heartfelt. In the middle stood those who recognized that both were acting true to form. Alp, unexpectedly transparent, Alina, unwavering in her composure. It is worth noting that the words Alp chose were not grand declarations. There was no plea, no dramatic promise. He spoke as if remembering a place he had visited, grateful and wistful, without demanding a return ticket. But in a world where a glance can trend and a sentence can shudder through an entire industry, even a soft remembrance becomes a spark. Throughout the day, as reactions multiplied, attention kept circling back to Alina's quiet message. Not a speech. Not a public scolding. Just a line that communicated both distance and dignity. It shifted the center of gravity from the spectacle back to control, a reminder that silence can redraw a map in a single stroke. Those closest to her reportedly felt relief. She had responded without compromising herself. Those closest to him, meanwhile, hoped audiences would recognize the nuance in what he said, and how careful he had been to avoid making it about a confession of present love rather than a truth about the past lingering into the present. And yet, a single worry kept resurfacing among their fans. Had something essential between them been damaged beyond repair? Was a friendship, if that's the right word for a connection both have guarded and never fully defined, now caught in a storm it could survive only by stepping farther apart? People who root for them, whether as friends or as possible co-stars or simply as two people who glow in each other's company, felt that worry in their bones. If he had left the door slightly open, had her message now closed it? Insiders insist the door is not slammed, only guarded. They say both are listening more than they're speaking, that a conversation none of us will hear is taking shape away from microphones. Perhaps that is how it should be. Not as entertainment, but as a private attempt to honor history while protecting the future each is building. If the project they were eyeing survives, it will be because both decide that the story can hold them without forcing them to perform the past. If it doesn't, the choice will be read as a statement, whether they intend it that way or not. As the evening fell on a day of constant refresh buttons and whispered updates, the mood shifted from fevered to reflective. People began asking different questions. Not just whether Alp still feels what everyone thinks he does, or whether Alina is hurt beyond words, but what it means when two very public lives try to manage something that doesn't fit an easy headline. They asked whether a single sentence should carry the power to upend months of care and caution. They asked who benefits when such moments are staged under studio lights. And still, a final layer lingered, the undeniable fact that Alp and Alina seemed to understand each other's silences as fluently as each other's words. Perhaps that is why one spoke and the other chose not to. Perhaps it is their way of balancing a scale the rest of us keep tipping with speculation and longing. The cameras have already moved on to their next assignment. The clips will keep spinning. But somewhere, away from panels and posts, two people are deciding how much of this belongs to the world and how much belongs only to them. We'll keep watching with the same care with which we tell it. Not to intrude, but to trace the lines they have already drawn in public, and nothing more. If a statement comes from Alina beyond that single calm message, we'll bring it to you. If Alp clarifies or softens what he shared, you'll hear it here first. Until then, the question hangs in the air, delicate and powerful: is the bond between them altered, or simply revealed for what it has always been, something strong enough to be felt even in silence? And if a project once destined now hesitates, is that hesitation an ending, or a waiting room where time decides what arrives next? This story will evolve, because they will. For now, we leave you with this: in the space between what was said and what was left unsaid, Alina Boz and Alp Navras have reminded everyone of the most complicated truth about closeness in the public eye. It can be real, it can be tender, it can be unspoken, and it can be misunderstood all at once. Thank you for watching Turkish series Stars. If you enjoyed this deep dive, remember to subscribe and share so you're here when the next chapter unfolds. Until then, we'll be listening, and we'll be careful with what we hear.